Alright, so we're here to do UFC 214 predictions, and on this card, we're going to be you're actually going to be with me making the picks on MMA Playground. I haven't finalized any of these picks, although there's a couple that I've had in my head just like since the fight was announced. Cyborg, Avenger, for example. But, good card. 2 title fights at the top. You've got Cyborg on the card. You've got Lawler, Cerrone, which is a fantastic fight, although it does have one X factor that's kind of making it a little bit less awesome for me. Manoa Ozdemir, which is probably a title eliminator. A couple of the big names like Ricardo, Lamas, and Murata. A couple of up-and-comers like Hanako Moicano, Brian Ortega, Fili, who's still kind of a thing. Also, I think possibly the lowest fights I've ever seen between 2 fighters coming into a UFC fight in the Curran versus Aldo fight. So let's kick it off. Josh Burkman versus Drew Dober. Josh Burkman on paper, a guy who probably has the more diverse set, the deeper skill set, and quite possibly actually is a more physically imposing fighter in his prime than Drew Dober, but a guy who's definitely falling out of his prime on the physical side of things, and a guy who I think has kind of gotten lost in his own head. He's unable to really plan out a fight anymore. He's kind of frozen by, I can do so many things that I'm just not going to do anything. And as a result, I'm taking Drew Dober to win by unanimous decision and send Josh Burkman packing from the UFC. Jared Brooks versus Eric Shelton. Very excited by this fight. Both guys are good physical athletes, although Jared Brooks a bit small. He's actually fought at 115 for a while, so imagine the size of him on that for a moment. I'm taking Brooks here. I believe in Brooks you have a more impressive fighter in terms of depth of skill and what he wants to do. Shelton's a little more diverse, has a bit more abilities in that regard, but at the same time, Brooks is deeper in where they both want to fight, which is kind of a ground game, a ground submission game. That is really where Brooks is. As much as Brooks is incredibly hittable, he is incredibly... he's actually pretty easy to take down, too, I think. Like, defense is not a thing he really has outside of submission defense. But a fantastic scrambler. I think this hits the mat. I think he outscrambles Shelton and either picks up a decision, or I wouldn't be surprised to see a submission. But I'm gonna say this makes the distance. I think Shelton has the defense to keep this going. Kylee Curran versus Alexandra Albu. Two girls who I feel don't really belong in the UFC, if that makes any sense. Curran just not very good in really any of her outings. Physically underwhelming fighter, scrappy, good fighter spirit, but no fight IQ. And Albu, really physically impressive fighter, but we don't honestly know anything about her real technical game or ability to do anything, because in her UFC debut against Badarek, she's so overmatched Badarek that the fight proved nothing. The problem is, I think she's going to have the ability to outmuscle Curran as well. And Curran's defense is not good. Being outstruck by Jamie Moyle tells me a lot of things, and none of them are good. So I'm going with Alexandra Albu. I haven't decided, honestly, if I think she's going to finish her or not. As much as she's historically been a finisher, but Curran is... Curran's been submitted enough times that I have to assume she can get maybe a rear naked choke tap out or something. Calvin Kattar, the Boston finisher, versus Andre Touchy-Fili. Going with Andre Touchy-Fili. There's a lot of flaws in Andre Fili's game. Like, a lot of flaws. Ability to game plan, ability to fight smart, ability to be something other than kind of just an action fighter, but Calvin Kattar is going to give him all of the things he wants to have a good fight. He's going to give him that action fight. And I have to go with Andre Fili to pick up a TKO victory in that case. Although, very excited for this fight. It's an action fighter's wet dream. Hanako Moicano versus Brian Ortega, T-City. I have significant doubts about both of these guys, really. In Moicano's case, It's the fact that he likes to go to the ground, and I think no one should want to go to the ground with Brian Ortega. He is an absolute killer there. But Ortega on the feet has no remote process to his game. And if you watch what Moicano did to Jeremy Stevens, a guy who has, I would say, more process than Ortega and a scarier power game. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink here. And was able to stay composed and win a decision there. I got to lean Moicano, but a finish by Brian Ortega is 100% always on the cards. It's always possible. But I am going with Moicano. I like his process. I like the fact that there's a game plan there. I like that there's honestly a higher level of fight IQ than there is with Ortega. Ortega is very instinctual, very chaotic, and it's not a bad thing necessarily, but I'm just not entirely certain he can even really get to this ground if Moicano decides he doesn't want to. Like, if he wants to play a ranged kickboxing game and utilize his footwork and his combinations, I just don't know if Ortega really has an answer to get the fight where he needs the fight to be. So, yeah, got to go with Moicano, but Ortega by submission is a completely legitimate pick, and roll with it. Aljamain Sterling versus Renan Barão. Been back and forth on this one, actually. On one hand, you have the fact that this is a 140 catchweight fight for the record. You have the fact that Barão is going down to a weight class, not quite because it's a catchweight fight as opposed to a 135-pound fight, but he's trying to cut weight back down to a weight cut that very nearly, in a very real sense, almost killed him. How is he physically going to handle that? And the fact that his style that he's been kind of trying to develop as his body deteriorates hasn't necessarily been that effective. On the other hand, you have Aljamain Sterling, who, without the ability to get a takedown against someone with a pretty good striking game, has always struggled. And Barão is incredibly difficult to get down. I mean, there's a reason there were a lot of comparisons to Jose Aldo when they were both champions. And if this turns into a kickboxing affair, I gotta favor Barão, but man, that Felipe Nover fight did a lot to shake my confidence in him. And the Augusto Mendez fight did a lot to improve my thoughts of Aljamain Sterling. I'm going with Barão because I still don't necessarily believe that Sterling is a guy I want to bet on in a fight where he cannot use the ground element of the game. And against Barão, I think that's a bad plan. So I foresee Barão getting this. It's a bad stylistic matchup for Aljamain Sterling, but it could pay off big for him. Ricardo Lamas versus Jason Knight. Going with Lamas. Jason Knight is a guy I've had a real hard time getting a hold on, to be honest. I thought Chas Skelly would beat him. I believe I picked Bruce Leroy over him. I don't think I picked Dan Hooker, but I even may have. I think I picked Jim Alaris. So, take this for what it is. I'm having a terrible time picking Jason Knight fights. But if we break this fight down into a stand-up game, while Knight's boxing is actually better than you would probably give him credit for, Lamas has been in there with better strikers, survived, and in many ways thrived. And if you look at the guys who have beaten Lamas, they are a step above Jason Knight. Knight's lack of defense in a lot of ways, also kind of, honestly, the absolute fodder for Ricardo Lamas to make use of something. He's a great opportunist, great at finishing people in that regard. That's what I see here happening, maybe in a third round. Ricardo Lamas by TKO. Although it's been a while since he's TKO'd someone, so it could also go to decision. But I think Knight's lack of defensive preparation at some point has to catch him. I think this is the fight. But if Knight can win this, honestly, a title shot is not out of the question. Jimmy Manuwa versus Volkan Oezdemir. I picked against Volkan Oezdemir in both of his UFC fights, and he has won both of them. In stunning fashion in the case of the Misha Serkinov fight, and in just sad OSP fashion in the Ovense Proof fight. Manawa, yeah, these two both want to stand and bang. They're both very much strikers. The problem becomes is that if you look at who's beaten Manawa, they've had to be able to mix in to a level a takedown threat. If that's Anthony Johnson or Alexander Gustafsson, we think of them as strikers, but they're guys who were going to utilize some of their wrestling to take advantage of the flaw in Manawa's game that he is one-dimensional. Oezdemir probably cannot do that. It's a possibility. I mean, he is training with Henry Hooft, who Anthony Johnson trains with. So there are some parallels there, but he's not the athletic freak that Johnson is. I mean, he lost to the third and fourth best guys in this division in a generation. It's hard to see Oezdemir on par with those guys. But if he is, it would truly be 2017 would truly be the year of Volkan Oezdemir if he can do this. But I think Manawa, he's a difficult fighter to face because he works a lot with his left hand, despite being so very, very loaded up on his right hand that it fools you into forgetting about the right hand. You get jacked, you get sent down. Got Manawa via second round TKO. Robbie Lawler, Donald Cerrone. I should be completely jizzing myself for this fight. I am not, because this was supposed to happen at 213. Cerrone had a blood staph infection and a pulled groin, and here we are 3 weeks later having this fight. That has me very suspect on Cerrone, like incredibly suspect on Donald Cerrone right now. And that's why I got to pick Robbie Lawler. Southpaw, likes to work body shots, hard hitter, pulled groin, staph infection 3 weeks ago. There's a lot of reasons to like Robbie Lawler in this fight. It's working with Henry Hooft. I think this could be a big thing because I've said this before. I hate Henry Hooft, the corner man. I love Henry Hooft, the coach. He is one of, if not the best striking coach around right now. Just get him out of the corner, please, because he is so terrible. But the flaws he has with Anthony Rumble Johnson and Michael Johnson come from lack of confidence, lack of esteem, I suppose, in a way. Robbie Lawler doesn't have that problem, so even the cornering isn't so bad. I've got Robbie Lawler. I don't think this goes the distance. I think one of these men are getting finished. I'm going to go with a third round TKO for Robbie Lawler. Still a great fight, but I would be a lot more comfortable if I was convinced both of these guys were close to 100% going in. Cyborg Juiciano versus Tanya Evinger. Yeah. Evinger is a power wrestler. She's never been finished by strikes, but her defense is not good. And you're fighting Cyborg, who has massive power, both as a striker and just power as a physical specimen. We can debate whether that's the roids or not all day. But she should obliterate Tanya Evinger. And I don't even question it. Another fight that I'm not particularly excited in the result is Tyron Woodley versus Demian Maia. Demian Maia has to get this fight to the ground really to win. As much as Woodley's stand-up can be very boring, low output, not really taking the fight, it's better than Demian Maia's, and Demian Maia's cardio over a 5-round fight. I'm going with decision because I don't trust Woodley to finish someone that isn't aggressive, that doesn't walk into it, basically. And the low pace may allow Maia's cardio to actually keep up. But if you look at Maia's history with wrestlers, it's not particularly good. People say it's been better at 170 with the wins over like Rick Story and Yakovlev and stuff. But and then Chael Sonnen, who was foolish enough to take him down. But you look at the Mark Munoz fight. You look at the there was another one I was thinking of. The Jake Shields fight, where he just really can't implement his game. It doesn't go well. And Woodley, I don't like Woodley, and I honestly don't believe he's the best welterweight in the world. I feel the two Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fights were frankly painful, and I think the Robbie Lawler fight was symptomatic of Lawler going in there and being much too open, and the Kelvin Gastelum fight is a fight where a guy wasn't at full shape because he botched his weight cut. That's not Woodley's fault, to be clear, but it's just weird. This is still a guy who lost a striking match to Jake Shields. It's never going to leave my mind, unfortunately. But he has a chance here to... Well, honestly, he doesn't have a chance to even really change my perspective, because I could totally see him just knocking Maia out in round 1. It's not really going to change my perspective, because it's Demian Maia, unless he wants to actually go into the grappling game of Maia, which wouldn't even necessarily convince me either, because it's not his grappling game I question. It's just his ability to actually do something other than to fight a Tyron Woodley fight. And then finally, John Jones, Daniel Cormier. I picked John Jones in their first fight. A lot has changed since then. We had the really unimpressive outing against OSP. We've had some less than convincing outings from Daniel Cormier as well. The Gustafsson fight was pretty difficult. The Rumble Johnson first fight had some difficulty as well. And the second Rumble Johnson fight had Rumble Johnson fight an absolutely terrible game. Cormier is getting up there in age. There's not really a lot of reasons to pick Cormier in this fight, unfortunately. Jones had a bad outing against OSP, but he appears to have refocused himself. It seems like John Jones is legitimately back. Whether that's a good thing or not, we can debate. I think it's a bad thing for Daniel Cormier. I think it's a good thing for this fight. Is it a good thing overall? I don't know. It depends if Jones has kind of learned from the incidents with the the driving problems, the drug problems, the dick pill problems. I'm kind of separating that in from drugs because that's also, I think, just a stupid problem. Yeah, I'm going with Jones. I'm going to say a third round TKO. Could be earlier than that. Could go the distance as well. Could be a war, but he's looking scary at these press conferences and stuff. It makes me concerned for DC. My brother insisted that I bring up that he's picking John Jones and Demian Maia as his lock picks, and that he's actually going to bet money on Tanya Evinger because of the ridiculous odds that he has found for her, which I think he said something about betting $500 would net him 4.5K if Evinger won. So if you want to throw money at a long odds fight, do it. There's always that chance. But that is all for this one. We'll see you on the next fight card. And the usual shit is in the description below, as well as a quick summary of picks. So, that's all. Enjoy it.